On the streets of Lagos, something unusual happens every year. A celebration that looks like it belongs in Brazil but lives in Nigeria. There are masks, there is music, there is movement, but beneath of all that, there is a story. A story of people who were taken across the ocean and somehow found their way back. This is the story of the Lagos Fanti Carnival. On the surface, the carnival feels like pure celebration. The energy is loud, the colors are bright, the streets of Lagos Island are filled with people dancing, drumming, and performing. If you didn't know better, you might think this is just another festival. But look closer. Why do some of the costumes resemble European styles? Why does the rhythm feel different from typical Yoruba drumming? Why do some families here carry Brazilian names? To understand this, we have to go back in time. Centuries ago, during one of the darkest periods in human history, millions of Africans were taken from the West African coast, from places not far from present-day Lagos. They were forced onto ships and transported across the Atlantic Ocean. Many of them were taken to Brazil. In fact, Brazil received more enslaved Africans than any other country in the world. There, they were forced to build lives under oppression. But even in that environment, they held onto something powerful: their culture, their rhythm, their identity. In Brazil, African traditions didn't disappear, they evolved. Music became a form of resistance, dance became a form of expression, religion, language, and identity adapted but never died. Over time, Afro-Brazilian communities created vibrant cultural expression. One of them was Carnival, a celebration filled with drums, costumes, parades, and street performance, similar to what we now know globally through events like the Rio Carnival in Brazil. But for Afro-Brazilians, this was more than entertainment. It was survival. It was identity. In the 19th century, something remarkable happened. Slavery began to decline, and many Africans, along with their descendants, made a bold decision. They returned back across the Atlantic, back to West Africa, back to Lagos. These returnees became known as Afro-Brazilians or Aguda, but they didn't return as the same people who left. They came back transformed, carrying new languages, new religion, new styles of architecture, and new cultural practice. When the Afro-Brazilians settled in Lagos Island, they began to build communities. You could see it in their homes, their churches, their names. Everything reflected a blend of words. They were no longer just African and no longer fully Brazilian. They had become something entirely new, a fusion of both. To celebrate this identity, they introduced their own version of Carnival, a street celebration inspired by Brazil but rooted in Lagos. This became the foundation of the Lagos Fanti Carnival. It wasn't just about the fun, it was about remembering where they had been, celebrating their freedom, and expressing who they had become. In Brazil, Afro-Brazilian groups like Olodum became known for powerful drumming rooted in African traditions. That same spirit lives here in Lagos. The beats you hear today are echoes of Africa that left, changed, and came back home. The costumes are impossible to ignore, bright, bold, and expressive, but they are not random. They reflect layers of influence: African heritage, Brazilian carnival traditions, even European style. The masks in particular represent transformation, a freedom to become something else, even if just for a moment. A reflection of a people who have lived through change and embrace it. In a fast-changing city like Lagos, it would be easy for traditions like this to fade. But the Lagos Fanti Carnival continues. Today, the Lagos Fanti Carnival is no longer just a memory of the past, it is alive. Right here in Lagos Island in 2026 at places like Tafawa Balewa Square, the celebration brings together entire communities, from campus to Lafiaji to Okofaji to Okepopo to Olowogbogo, Epetedu and Isaleku. These are not just locations, they are historic community, each carrying a piece of this story, and on this day, they all come together as one. As each group steps into the street, they bring their own identity, their own color, their own choreography, their own rhythm. No two groups are the same, but together they create something powerful. This is where the carnival transforms from history into experience. It reminds people of their roots, their journey, their resilience. It tells a story that cannot be forgotten. Some people celebrate for the culture, some for the tradition, some without even knowing the full story. But that's the beauty of it. Even without knowing, they are part of something bigger. From Africa to Brazil and back again. A journey marked by pain, but remembered through celebration. In every drum beat, in every costume, in every step taken on this street, there is history, there is identity, there is a story that refuses to be forgotten. This is the Lagos Fanti Carnival, and this is Lagos telling the world we remember. If you love discovering hidden stories like this is UBJ Travels exploring the city beyond what you think you know about. Make sure you subscribe